Hello, and welcome to the speaker series of our Soul Care program. That is offered by Volunteer Hospice of Chatham County. My name is Astrid Raffin-Pellows, and for those of you unfamiliar with Volunteer Hospice, we were founded in 1978 by Rose Crumb, a nurse, on the Olympic Peninsula in Washington State. We are one of the very few independent hospices offering nursing care without billing Medicare or any other insurance company. All our services are provided free of charge, and we have a lot of flexibility in how we offer those services. As the volunteer services manager, I get to create and organize programs such as this one. Aside from this speaker series, the Soul Care program offers monthly death cafes called Tea to Die For. The name came from a volunteer because I'm a tea drinker. Tea to Die For are a very informal session, in-person gathering to share thoughts on death and dying over coffee, tea, and cake. The next speaker series will be on January 10, talking about Death Won't Kill You, how to have that conversation will be the topic. And we invited Loretta Downs to address that specific topic. All the details are on our website at volunteerhospice.org. Today, I'm very happy to have here Jo Atkins, who will talk about children and grief. So children and grief, those are two words that we wish didn't have to go together. However, they do. Well-meaning adults may leave children out of sacred and transformative life moments, assuming they're too young to grieve, to understand, or participate in families' goodbyes. My own mother prevented me from going to a funeral when I was a child. And in this conversation, Jo will talk about some ways grief manifests itself in children, how adults can help, and opportunities for including children in goodbye rituals as they are navigating loss. Jo Atkins is at home in the sacred and transformative space that is dying. As a professional counselor, speaker, and author, she has dedicated 3 decades to supporting grieving and bereaved children and families and individuals in their end-of-life journeys. You can find out more about her at marthajoatkins.com. I will put the link in the chat. And you can also watch her popular TEDx talk called More to Dying Than Meets the Eye. Martha, it's a pleasure to have you here among us. I will let you take it from here.
Astrid, thank you. Thank you. It's nice to see the folks I can see on the screen. There's a whole bunch of people that look like they're tucking away today. Good for you. Tuck away if you feel like popping on as we go along. Hi, there's some coming on. I'm happy to have people pop in and out. I understand we have things to do. And the topic today and the way I'm going to present it may open you a little bit. It may niggle your heart a little bit. We're going to take some pauses every now and again to check in with our bodies and have some somatic awareness. Rather than do a lecture today, frameworks take us to college. I'm going to tell you a story about a young man named Liam and his friend Mark. I had the good fortune to care for Mark in his last 6 weeks last year, and I'm going to share some of that story with you. There's some interviews with Liam, and as we do that, the conversations will unfold about working with children in various aspects. This particular story is around an end of life and hospice. As we move along today, if you have questions about emergency room deaths or hospital deaths, or we can go wherever you want to go. We will start here with this story about Liam and Mark. Before we do that, I want to invite you just to come into the room and feel your seat on the seat and your feet on the floor, and take a breath. That was for me, so I could take a breath. You can breathe through your nose. Take a 4-count breath in. Hold that and then blow out. And do that one more time and feel the temperature change as you breathe in and as you breathe out. I love that warmer space on the other side. So as we go along today, I'll invite you to take care of yourself however you need to do that. We are grown people, and I don't know what's happened in your life, and I just invite you to do that. We will stop every now and again to check in with ourselves, and that'll be a great time to ask questions. So jot down your questions and off we'll go. All right, fingers crossed. I'm going to share screen, and this is going to work flawlessly. Yes, maybe. Yay! All right, I don't have remote control. All right, so you see on the right there, the tall one is Mark, and the less tall one is Liam. Uh-oh. Nope. Oh, all right, it's gonna work. There we go. Okay. This is Liam.
The kitty died. This was Finn. Finn. So Finn died in Washington, and he got buried in West Virginia, in the little cemetery. Got it. Who else is buried in the cemetery over there?
Mark Allen Mueller.
Ah, okay. So, I know Mark Allen Mueller. And I know him, and he's the reason I know you.
Yep.
And he's the reason I know your family. Yeah, so would you talk a little bit about how you knew Mark?
Well, how I knew him is he hosted my baby shower.
Oh my
at
gosh.
his house.
Yes.
And then, like, when I was young, I met him. And then a few years later, my mom and my parents and him wanted to buy a property. So they decided to buy one all together. And Steve kind of directed us to this one. And we bought it. And then in 2021, he was diagnosed with cancer, pancreatitis. And yeah.
You've known Mark a long time then.
Yeah.
You're just since
10 years.
He knew you before, and then you knew him. What kinds of stuff did you do with Mark?
I would sometimes come down here to drop off a smoothie, and we'd watch like Leave It to Beaver or Saturday morning cartoons.
That's fun.
And then like we'd have Thanksgiving together. We had a movie night with just us too.
Yeah.
And like we played games with other friends. And we went to like events like burning chicken and the 4th of July fireworks.
You guys did a lot of stuff together. Yeah. That's cool. So he was a friend. Yeah.
To me and my parents.
Yeah. Yeah, he's a good guy.
So that's a brief introduction. Liam is 10 in this telling. I recorded him this summer in West Virginia. Mark died last November. It's been almost a year, November 15th, 2022. And he and I got connected through some friends 10 or so years ago. He was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer and worked very, very hard to keep himself on the planet. Mark was at the CDC, and he had lots of connections, and he knew how to make phone calls, and he was not scared to make phone calls, and he kept himself alive. The first doctor told him to go home and call his people to be with them. And he was not having that. And he lived for 2.5 years. You're going to see pictures of Mark in various states of a decline. You're going to see Liam with Mark and with lots of other people. There's quite a village here, which is part of the goodness of this particular story, and one that I really want people to take away today about the importance of the village for children. There we go. So this is part of the village. You can see little Liam over on the left with that shirt on. I don't know what that is. And some friends, and those are friends that were there. All of those people were there to care for Mark at the end. And then here on the right is Liam on his dad's lap, and mom is in the background, and you see Mark there in the blue and somebody with a fire extinguisher. I do not know what danger these people were doing in West Virginia, but they were doing something. Mark has this beautiful farm that he and these people bought together, as Liam said. It turned it into a conservation easement. And Mark talked to me about Liam and how he spent a lot of time with Liam talking about trees and talking about grasses and talking about why you don't put cattle in some places and you put cattle in other places, because he wanted to pass on knowledge about caring for the land. It was really important to Mark. And they had a really wonderful and special relationship. This is Mark at his house in Washington, D.C., looking like himself. I just wanted you to kind of get a sense of his Markness. Yeah. And this is a beautiful picture of the farm. It was where Mark wanted to go to die, and we were not able to make that happen. We did get to have one last visit there, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So this is a Mark and Liam. Liam sent this to me. He wanted me to share it with you.
Piggly, wiggly, piggly, wiggly, piggly, piggly, wiggly.
There you go. They spent quite a long time figuring out how to make that dance happen on the ice. So these are important memories and important pieces of bonding for these two friends. And for these two friends, Mark came back through San Antonio after being at MD Anderson, and this was right at the beginning of COVID. And he came and we sat on the back porch, and he asked me some questions about music at funerals and what kind of music I would like at my funeral. So we talked about that. Some other friends were there, and I asked him what kind of music he would like, and he never answered. Then he asked me some more questions about end of life things, and he could just touch in just a little bit. And he made a comment, when I die, I want you to come and help me. And I said, okay, we'll talk about that when and if that arrives. These are the kinds of things Mark and I sent to each other, really highbrow. He had quite a sense of humor. He was brilliant. He was funny. He was kind. He had a worldwide community of people. That is not hyperbole. Somebody said he was the mayor of every village he was in, and I believe that's true. I went to visit Mark. He kept inviting me to the farm. I hadn't been able to go. Decided I needed to go. He and I met at a friend's house, and he said, on this trip, what would you charge me to help me die? And I said, I really need to think about that. And I did. We didn't talk about it again. I stayed for a while and got to meet. I met Liam during this trip out to the farm for the first time. So this is another Liam clip.
When Mark got sick and he knew that he wasn't going to get well, he asked me if I would help him with the end of his life. to talk about what you remember.
Some days he looked normal and was like acting normal, but other days he was not looking that well. He was very skinny.
He was skinny, yeah.
And he was just tired looking, and yeah.
Yeah. What do you remember about, well, did he tell you he was sick, or did did your mom tell you? How did you find out he was sick?
Well, I don't really remember, but the times that I do remember was definitely like more 2022 and a little bit of 2021
Yeah.
that he was sick.
Yeah. What do you remember about being with him at his house in DC?
We, like, when he was in his final days,
Yeah, whenever. Then or before.
we didn't really go to his house much after before the final days.
Yeah.
We did, like, sometimes bring him food and stuff.
Yeah.
And it was, sad to see him in his final days at the house. He looked pale. His eyes looked yellow.
Yeah. They were pretty yellow.
Super duper skinny.
He was super duper skinny, and he wasn't getting up very much. Did you see him up out of the bed, or
He never.
he was in the bed? Yeah.
So we know kids process the same experience, just like adults do, differently at different ages. So he had his experience 6 months ago. I had mine. Mark's family had theirs. All the friends had theirs. And as we have gone along in this year, we have processed and reprocessed. We will continue to do that. And for Liam to, he's had an experience in a community that I don't often see children get to have. I know they do. I'm happy when it happens, and I'm happy when they're supported the way they are. And he certainly was supported in this way. He has a really beautiful relationship with his parents. It's very open. He's very open. They talk a lot about what he needs and what they need. And I was somebody who had been around and could fill in some gaps for him. So I talked a little bit differently than I would have. It wasn't a counseling session, it was an interview. And there were things that I could fill in for him about where he missed, things I could remind him of, some strength building I could do around what he was good at or what I noticed in his self-care and his resourcing. You'll hear about some of that in a little bit. There. So Mark wanted to go back to the farm. So we went back to the farm. It was beautiful, absolutely beautiful out there. Rivers, you see pictures out the window, and you can see him sleeping. And we were out there for 4 or 5 days. I took him over to Hendersonville to get some blood work done. He spent a lot of time on the couch sleeping. There was an evening where a group of his friends called in and did a meditation with him, and he fell asleep in the meditation. And it was very subdued and gentle and quiet. This is a picture of him right before that, before we went out to the farm, where his eyes are a little bit brighter. And he was bugging us. He wanted to go to the farm that weekend. I had just gotten COVID. He was going to drive himself, he said. He was on copious amounts of pain medicines, and we were inviting him not to do that, and he didn't. He needed to walk around the farm and see it and tell stories, and he let me do some filming.
How many trees have you planted?
About 150.
can't really understand what he says here, but he's talking about the bushes and
bush plant that's outside my kitchen window, which I've the little berries, purple berry.
this you see his face, how thin he is, and he was so happy to be outside. He reveled in nature, absolutely loved it. On this property, there was a church that was built 100 years ago. And this is him sitting on the altar in the church talking about his funeral. He had not talked about his funeral before. He was talking about the vault. He knew where he wanted to be buried on the property. There were specific things that he wanted for his body. He didn't want to be embalmed. And we ended up having that needed to happen. But that's not what he wanted. But this, he imagined he was going to be here January, February, March, where he said those things aloud. And he was alive for about 2 more weeks after this picture. So we're back in the house, more sleeping. And then he got a text. A little girl was going to come over. She had come Halloweening last year, and she was coming again. And he took off. I didn't know where he went. And just full of energy from this man who had none, came down with wigs and you see hats and all these things. And he was a one-man Halloween explosion. He got the pumpkin lit. Fortunately, I did not get the picture of me and my wig in there. And there's one other person with us. But he was so...
Oh my God, you flew over here in one of those jet thingies? You're a modern witch, huh?
I prefer the male stereotypes without the pointy hats, and I drive a more fuel efficient broom.
Whatever, you're so woke.
She drives a fuel efficient broom. See if I can go back to that. So he was an actor at one point in his life. So he was able to jump into this persona. He pulled the antlers off the wall and he was petting the antlers like there was a creature there. I know I said it was a change. It was such a remarkable change from the 2 hours before. And I loved his connection with this little girl. He eventually said he didn't want to hear from anybody else. I'm not showing you the rest of it because I didn't get her permission to see her face. But she loved him and he loved her. She knew he was sick, and it was Mark. It was Mark. And her family wanted them to see each other and knew this would probably be the last time.
Oh my God.
Okay, so a little shake. Move around in your chair a little bit. Sometimes people get still. You'll see me say to Liam in a little while to move around a little bit. Anybody have any questions before we keep going? All right, we will carry on. When we came back, Mark needed chemotherapy. He had been in the hospital. Pain had been a significant issue for him. Hospice had been encouraged. He had the kind of insurance, I had not heard of this, where he could be on hospice and still get chemotherapy at the same time. So he did that, and that worked out well eventually, but there was definitely that liminal space between two worlds where he could do both of those. He met his hospice nurse, but he kept her at a distance, and it was an interesting time. This ended up being his last chemo. We didn't know that at the time. And I'll invite you to notice his energy and notice the energy you have as you look at the picture. We have younger selves. We're talking about children. We have children in us too. So I'll invite you to just notice that if anything comes up there as I say that. And there was lots of this. He so badly wanted to be with people, and he was so tired, and he didn't want to give up. All of those things together.
I took him to the hospital to get a treatment because he wanted a chemo treatment, and then the doctors told him they weren't going to do that anymore. And he came back, and that was on Wednesday, and he died on Saturday morning. And you and your family were there pretty quickly. I don't remember if you were there Wednesday or if you came on Thursday. Do you remember?
Maybe Wednesday, but we were there pretty much all the days except we were there. I don't think we were there Saturday, maybe just like Saturday morning though.
Yep, that's right. That's what I remember too. You guys came Saturday morning.
And left.
Yeah. I remember you being curious about what was happening. Am I making that up, or was that true?
I was a little curious about some things that was happening.
Yeah. Do you remember what some of those things were?
Like all the stuff you were doing and giving him, I guess.
Yeah. Like the medicines and turning him and doing stuff, and oxygen. I remember talking to you about the oxygen. Yeah. Did I give the syringe to you to give him some medicine? Do you remember
I think
that?
a little bit.
Yeah, I think so too. How was it for you to be there with, I mean, it was a house full of adults, and you?
One kid.
One kid. I know. How was that for you?
I mean, I knew most of them, and I could, talk to them. But, yeah, I was mostly just with my parents.
Yeah. I remember you sitting in a chair. Did you have a tablet or something you were watching sometimes? Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk for just a moment about stress response in kids. I do not know who made this chart. I wish I could give credit for it. I think it's pretty and it's right on. So kids get in trouble for having nervous systems that are sensitive, and they have a response in whatever situation they're in. And happily, Liam's family and Liam's community understood his stress responses. He's pretty subdued, so he gets a little freezy. And there are other kids, a couple other girls who came in who also got a little bit freezy, but then they got really talkative, really moving their bodies and moving all around the kitchen and needed to be outside. Both of those are responses to what's happening in the moment. They were in a new environment. There's lots of people there. They're in a situation they hadn't been in before. Their parents are acting in a way that is not usual for their parents to act, and that's confusing. The kids were all given preparation for the experience, and preparation is fantastic. I used to do preparation for kids to go into the ICU at Children's Hospital to see their brothers and sisters who were sick, or their brothers and sisters who were dying, and we'd get the dolls out and take pictures. We had Polaroid cameras at the time. Now you can just take your phone and show. Well, we'd take Polaroid pictures and sit around together and pass the pictures and talk about what the IV poles look like, and talk about what the sounds were, talk about what the smells were, all of the things to help them understand a little bit more about what was going to happen. And then we get to the door, and you stand at the door, and I would give them something to look for in the room. Sometimes I would put a Kleenex box on the end of the bed, and I would invite them to look for the Kleenex box. Or if the medicine was a particular color, one of the medicines on the IV pole, I would ask them to look for that color. The nurse was there. We talk about the nurse, what the nurse was wearing. The nurse had a stethoscope. So it was a little bit education. It was a little bit treasure hunt. And it gave them a safer entry into the experience. The adults are the ones who often had the harder time. There were nurses that were having their own stress response and were not interested in having kids in the unit. And I got to be, what did I get to be? I got to be strong around that. I got to learn how to be strong around that. And some people just don't think that's okay. I think it's really important if the kid wants to go in and there's enough support, the opportunity is there for them to do that. A teacher taught me a long time ago about a death data bank, and that children have a death data bank. You and I have a death data bank. Ours is however many years old it is. The conversation then was when you talked about Wile E. Coyote and running off the edge, he's going to come down and he's going to pop back up to life. We know what that is. For kids, it's a cartoon. If you're driving down a street and you see somebody under a yellow sheet on the side of a road after a car accident, that has meaning to you. That has meaning to me. To a little one, it's a yellow bump on the road. They don't have a death data bank to make sense of that. So it's important for us to separate, ask questions about what the child wants to see or know. Short little questions. Somebody said to me one time, it's the sex talks you don't say all the way where babies come from. You say babies come from their mommies, and then you wait and you see what the next question is. So in these kinds of situations, it's a little bit at a time. And well, the questions around coming into a situation like for Mark is, what was their relationship? Was it somebody that the child had seen a lot, had a deep and abiding relationship with? In this situation, absolutely. Does the child have emotional resources, people around him, resources to help him be in the moment and be connected to himself, to fall apart and be held if he needs to be held? Does he have tools to step away if he needs to step away in himself, or have somebody around who can help him step away? And in Liam's case, he had all of those things. It's important to assess where the kid is and what all is happening and what they want. If they want to go in and see somebody, and you can make that happen in a way that is as gentle as it can be, not painless, because we can't always do painless. And these kinds of opportunities give, they teach us about emotions, and they teach us about how to be in hard places, and teach us how to be with our own feelings, and then how to navigate through that. So all of these things come into focus as we think about this stress responses in kids. I'm not going to read all these, and I can get a copy of these if you want them. So this is Mark more sleeping. This is his cat Boo, who spent a lot of time with him. Liam also had a nice relationship with Boo. And this is Mark 2 nights before we went to the hospital for the last time. And when we got to the hospital, got to the chemo room, the nurse took a look at him, looked at me, squinted, and he eyes were closed, and she said, "Oh, honey, let's give you some fluids, and I'm going to message your doctor." And he said, "I'm getting chemo today. I am getting chemo today." And he looked skeletal. They were worried that he was going to die in the next 6 hours, and they were ready to call a code. There was a woman there with a walkie-talkie, and I was unsuccessfully trying to talk Mark into just going home, which he was not going to do. And I finally got up and left and let the people who had been, the people who were there do their work. I went and stood in the hall, and I stood next to somebody, arm to arm, so that I could get my nervous system regulated. And the doctor came and said, we're not sending him to the ER. Mark, you can't have chemo anymore. It's time for you to go home. So we came home. There was no hospital bed. There was no nothing because he was on hospice with chemo option. I love this picture because of the stairwell. I love the imagery of that. Makes me very happy. So texts were sent. We got back to the house, and this is the group that arrived.
What? I mean, you were there a lot, and there are parents who are worried about their kids that are your age, even a little older, sometimes a little younger, coming to be with somebody who's at end of life like Mark.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say to them about that?
I mean, it's good to, if you know them, to say your last goodbyes.
Yeah.
I think, and spend a little time with them.
Yeah. Were you, how do I ask this? Do you remember what kind of feelings you had when you were there?
The first time I said hi to him when he was in his bed, I was definitely sad.
Yeah.
Then I got more used to it,
Yeah.
being there more.
It looked like that's what happened. It was kind of, I don't know, you see something for the first time and aren't quite sure what you're going to see, and it can be make us a little nervous, make me a little nervous, make you a little nervous. Yeah, but then you kind of knew where things were, and you know what else I remember? Mark his eyes had been closed for a long time, and when you came to the bed, he opened his eyes, and he looked at you, and I don't remember if he talked, but he knew you were there.
He was he groaned.
He groaned. Yeah, he made some noises. He did. Yeah. Is there anything from that time that that was hard for you to see?
Him sometimes.
Yeah. What made it better when it got hard?
Well, I mean,
I'm going to pause that right there. Did you see that big breath he just took? So the question was, what made the hard thing easier? And his nervous system had a big release right there. Sighs are not just sighs when you're in these kind of conversations with kids. It's a nervous system release, and they'll crack their neck sometimes or crack their knuckles, and it's a reset, and it's so they can get on and do the next part.
I guess being with him was better, and he held on for a long time, so I knew that this was going to happen sometime.
Yeah. It's kind of two things, isn't it? It's glad to see him and hard to see him. Both. Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. Another thing I noticed about you was when it got too loud, or there got to be too many people, or you were just done, you would go sit somewhere, or you would go upstairs, or you knew how to take care of yourself and do what you needed to do. Does that sound right too?
Yeah.
Yeah, you kind of do that other places too, don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. How did you learn that?
I just do.
Just do? Yeah. Yeah. That's cool. If you had, let's see, if there were kids that you were talking to that were going to go see somebody that was at the end of life, what kinds of things would you tell them?
If you need space, take your space.
Mm-hmm.
And definitely speak to them, so you'll have one last time.
Oh, speak to the person who's dying? Yeah. Did you get to say everything you wanted to say to Mark?
Mm-hmm.
You left him some stuff too on the bed. What did you leave him?
Well, I gave him this snake at when he was in a hospital, and he still had that, and that's kind of what I gave him though, because he wanted that with him.
Yeah.
And he also had this turtle that I gave him.
Oh, that's cool. I remember that snake. I've got pictures of him with those things on the bed. Those were neat gifts. Really neat gifts. Okay, wiggle a little bit.
We'll all wiggle a little bit. So as he was saying, there's two ways I wanted to see him, and gosh, it was hard to see him. It's real. And it's real when you're 10 years old or 9 years old, and it's real when you're 54 and 70 and 90. We contain multitudes, and giving voice to that and saying, I feel this way one minute and this way another minute is important in this experience. There's a picture, I'm not sure I got in here, where people are around Mark's bed. People are crying. It is emotional. And there's a man standing over in the corner. He got the biggest grin on his face. He's having a conversation with somebody at a different part of the house. Both those are real. Both those are happening in the same experience. And giving voice to that and honoring that helps kids understand that that's real and it's okay. And their cycles go fast sometimes. They can go in, they see what they need to see, and then they need to take off and go take care of themselves. And giving them permission to do that is important. You can also give them jobs. Sometimes some kids want a job to do. When I was at Abode, I would often send kids out with sort of sharp scissors and walk and take a vase out and go cut flowers. And then we would use those flowers for a ritual or ceremony later. And some kids loved that. Some kids didn't want to have anything to do with that. They wanted to go play their video games and tune out the world. But for those who wanted jobs, that was a lovely job to have them do. Go get water for people, brush hair. I taught kids how to use the sponge to do mouth care. Some kids want to do more, and that's great. If the person is able to be touched, there have been conversations about that. They want their feet rubbed. They want lotion on their feet or lotion on their hands. It's a great thing for the kids to do. I have done handprints with kids and people on hospice who are a little bit further along, still able to connect and communicate, and they're okay. Sometimes we do handprints and sometimes just thumbprints, but it gives a thing to do, and they can look at the thumbprints, and their thumbprints are similar to mine, and there's all kinds of opportunities for stories that come from that. I've also done that with people who are farther along in their process and are not speaking anymore. And I'm careful with that, because speaking doesn't necessarily mean they're not present. So there's a nuance to that, and it can be really useful and connecting. So here's Liam with all of the adults in the house, and there's some pictures being shown, and we've got a Zoom thing going on with people from somewhere in the world who've calling in to connect with Mark. He would go down with medicine for a little while, and he would come up, and we'd have him for about 40 minutes, and then he would raise his hand up, or he'd shoot me a look and let me know that it was time for more medicine. More people coming in. That switch from gonna be on hospice and get chemotherapy to just be on hospice gets everybody awake and alert. And there's Liam right there. This is our friend Betsy. Liam's mother is behind him, but all of these other people know who he is. And he could have gone to any one of them anytime for anything, and anybody would have helped him. They would have moved him to his mother. it really touches me that he was included the way he was.
My mom and dad would be taking care of the cats, and I'd be taking care of the puppy since it's my request.
Is there a particular kind of puppy?
Okay, we don't want to go there yet. I'm not sure how that one got in there, but we'll. That got put on the refrigerator because it got really loud. And this is farther along, you can see. This is the day we did a ritual. We also pared down who was coming in the house. There were about 20 of us who cared for Mark over 6 weeks. And the last few days, it was probably down to 10 or 8. And we took shifts at night and did the things we needed to do for him. And Liam was there. I gave medicine to Mark regularly and drew it up and asked Liam if he wanted to give medicine. He had watched me do it. I talked to him about the cheek and showed him how to do it, and he did it, and he was a champ. He wanted to know about the oxygen, why it worked the way it did, why he had to have it on. We talked about all those things. We talked about the bed. We talked about how he wasn't really going to the bathroom. It's all the things. And the beautiful thing about those kinds of questions, there are adults in the room that have those questions too. And you can talk about them in a kid way, and the kid and the adults that are around that are too scared to ask, get that part of them calmed too. It's a good thing. I loved doing hospital prep for whole big extended families. And I would talk to the 5, 6, 7, or 8-year-old, however old that kid was, and everybody could sink down in and learn things and get information. So this is the snake, the snaky snake. And did you hear Liam said Mark wanted that? He wanted that with him. And this is a key. He said there was a turtle, and I'm not sure where the turtle is, but I was struck this morning as I was thinking about this. The archetypal image of a snake in the transformation, and the turtle is around protection. And here's this key to go to this new place that he's going to. Mark and Liam had a special relationship. And if I look at these as toys that a little boy gave to a friend of his, I mean, that's one way we can hold dualities. This other thing is he had some kind of knowing in him. If we think about archetypes and how these exist in humanness all over the world and all kinds of cultures, and it's interesting to me that those are the 3 things that he chose. So we did I call it a crossroads ceremony. I learned it from Sarah Kerr, who is a ritualist, doula, death and dying person in Canada. Her company is called Sacred Death Care, I believe, spelled the Canadian way. So I use this at Abode quite a lot, and we used it it takes its own shape. So let me tell you the shape that it took this time. Mark was not speaking any longer. This is night. I don't know if it was the night before he died or I think it was the night before he died. We put him in the circle. There were 14 of us. We all got around in a circle and lit a candle. And I said, we're having a crossroads ceremony for you, Mark. And I want you to imagine that you have on a backpack. And all of us are going to go around the circle, and we're going to talk about what we want to put in your backpack for you to take with you. And we're going to talk about the gifts that you've left us that nobody's ever going to be able to take away. And we're going to start with the elder, because you, in Indigenous communities, You start with the elder because they have a wisdom in a way, not wisdom better than anybody else, but they have a particular wisdom. And then you go to the next person, who's the next person in age, who's the next person in age. It's kind of fun. You're in this serious moment with your friend here in this bed who's dying, and then you got to figure out all right, who's the next one? She's 32, he's 49. It allows, I'm going to say nervous system again, to recalibrate. So like Liam took that big breath, we'd laugh and we'd move around, and then the next person would talk. The first person who spoke was Terry, and Terry is in her 70s, long flowing white hair, a lawyer, brilliant elocution skills. It was stunning to hear her experience what she wanted to say of Mark, how she held all of us in that, how she held Mark, what she put in his backpack, and then what she was taking with her from him. It was beautiful. And then to the next person, and then to the next person. The last person to speak, because he was the youngest one in the room, was Liam. And y'all, I was blown away. I can't tell you what he said. I have no idea what he said. I know that all of us were crying. There's I look at him and I have to remind myself he's 10. The way he speaks and the way he moves. And we hear about old souls. I hear about old souls, and I make up that he is one, and he's also very much 10. But in that moment, he said goodbye to his friend Mark, and it was beautiful. He gave us all a beautiful, beautiful gift. These kinds of coming together to share, sometimes people want to do it, sometimes they don't, and sometimes people are a little wiggly. Setting the space for it and holding it well makes it okay to cry, makes it okay to laugh. All those things are set up on the outset. And then when we were done, we blew out the candle and turned Mark's bed so he was facing the door. And then we all went and ate. There was a big table behind us and a big kitchen, and we got a little rowdy. And energy came down, and then we got rowdy again, and energy came down. And I think Mark would have liked that. There's the movement, a party that he liked, and also, would y'all shut up? I'm trying to take a nap. It's both of those things. Here's Liam in the chair. He wanted to be in the room. He's playing his video game. You can see the pictures and things that are around. There are pictures of Mark's farm there so that he can turn and see those. The two of them were having their time together. And this is Dan. This is Liam's dad. And when I talk about resources, what a gift it is to have a male figure who can be in emotions and demonstrate that for his kid. You can see Liam's leg over here on the left. Those are his rainbow pants. And he's watching. And he's learning. And I said to Liam after this was all over, you have knowledge that your peers don't have around end of life and around being with people like this. And you're going to be able to help people if you want to. He said, okay, Jojo. I think he will. This is moving further into goodbye. And this is Saturday morning. We were Mark was ready to go. Liam's parents brought him in to say goodbye, and they had their time. And then they went on to the farm. They decided they weren't going to wait. And I appreciate where Liam is in these pictures and where he is not in these pictures. It's important. And they knew something, felt something about that. And they made meaning of Mark's leaving, dying later in the afternoon as they were driving to West Virginia. They made meaning of it in a way that had to do with some birds and some weather changes. And they there was a narrative created there, a meaning making created there. I'm not getting all of that right, but there was something created there. And this is Mark's brother. You can see it's very quiet now. There was a point where we all kind of looked at each other, and one group said, I'm going upstairs. Another group said, I'm going for a walk. Another group said, I'm going away, going away. So Mark and his brother sat for a while. And I put the snake here because this was the transition point. And the next slide will be Mark after he's died. So it's the end of the bed, and Mark's head is that way. There's some flowers on the end of the bed. It's in the space in his home where we've been all of this time. Mark is dressed in a hoodie. He's got a brown, I think it's a brown blanket that's pulled up, and his hands are across. It's not a close-up. Let's see, what else could I tell you? So that's a way you could do a preparation. One more piece. This was Mark's sister. Saturday, Jeff and I said goodbye to Jeff's brother, Mark, at his home in DC. Mark was surrounded by the love of several friends that were fully attentive and by his side throughout his journey. I have witnessed death before, but I'm any beauty in it like I did on Saturday. Mark being surrounded by people who truly loved him was so heartwarming. He was immersed in love and the best care possible. We shared lots of tears and laughter, ending with a medley of songs sang to him by all of us, arm in arm, as he left his home. I decided not to share those pictures. I don't, that was a tender special time. And there's some things that I am more okay with being on the internet. This is a recorded thing, and other things that I will only show when I'm doing in-person experiences. So we tended Mark's body and had him for 6 or 7 hours before we called the hospice. The hospice nurse was quite surprised when she came and looked in, and he looks good. And he did look good. And he'd been there a little while. So here is the shot now. Flowers on the end of the bed. You can see him. It's kind of a far away shot. But the whole place has been cleaned, and the darkness of the space and the fullness of it has changed. And we had him there until 8 or 9 that night. Some kind men from the funeral home came in their van, and they wanted to know if we needed time, and we did not need time because we had been
third ward in Milwaukee, and he was looking at
spending a lot of time with them. We played music as they were putting him in the body bag. Some places don't do that in the home. There's all kinds of ways to do it. They brought a body bag out, put him in the bag, and then covered him up. And we all sat and witnessed that. And it was okay. We had music. Once he was zipped up, we stood there a minute. We made some jokes and figured out what from his playlist he might like to have. He probably didn't like what we picked, but we ended up playing Rainbow Connection from the Muppets. And we sang him out of the house with Rainbow Connection. And here's the aftermath. He had this on the wall in his house. And it's fun to think of him throwing flowers on a mountain. Thanksgiving happened the next week. How are we on time? Oh, we're good on time. And then out to the farm, and there's all this wood out there that needed to be burned. Burning is a great ritual. We burned, and we burned more. We ate a lot, and then we burned more. Liam spent time with me out at the burn pile. I think we had 6 or 7 bonfires. Here he is with his mom over here. It's quite therapeutic to throw things in the fire. Told stories, many stories. And then the church where Mark was, there's the rail there, needed some rehab before the funeral. So there's another young man there with Liam, and they're working on a project for those Christmas trees. The windows needed to be scraped. That's a Confederate symbol from the wartime. So we took those off, and there was a disco ball put up, and a lot of gay people in this church. I think whoever was in this church back then probably would have been rolling over, but it's a beautiful place. And then this is a picture of Mark from long ago when he was an actor. I put this here because there were pictures pasted all over the back of the church, and the kids helped do that. They helped put the tape and the pictures up for folks to see. Mark asked a friend of his to make a bespoke casket for him. So this is the casket making process happening in the home. And this is the casket with a live person in it. We had to pick up the casket to make sure people could carry it, because Mark was about, he was right at 115 pounds, and that casket was about 100 pounds itself. It's a heavy, heavy casket. These mushrooms were drawn by a teenager. So this is the casket lid, and teens, like to participate as they like to participate. She did not want to be seen. She did not want to be videoed. She did want to leave something on the inside of the casket. And then the body eventually was brought to the church. And I wanted to
Can you hold this?
So I love, Liam was the welcoming, he was the welcoming committee. There were some people back there too. Liam really wanted to help carry the casket in, and he was not strong enough. And the adults told him that he could help in other ways. They didn't, they were very kind in their no. And he got to be there for that. The casket was set up. Oh, makes me laugh. There they are getting that out. Lots of chairs. Liam helped with the chairs. Some of the other kids helped set up. There were 100-ish people at the funeral. And then this is the burial site. This is up on a hill, blue tarp, and under it is where the hole was, and the backhoe came, and we got to talk about all those things too. Liam really got to see the fullness of it. And this is the road going away from Mark's farm. And let me just, I think you can hear a little bit of.
Preparing for a winter concert at my school that was going to happen on December 15th. And then I also got into my school choir. So while during that time, I learned this song called Tiny Lights, and I'd like to sing it all for you all today.
So we won't hear him sing, but he stood up in front of that congregation of 100 people who had gathered and sang that song for them and for Mark and for himself. And then these guys are they carried the casket from the chapel a goodly ways up to the top of the hill there. And people are invited to wear bright colors. And that's a pretty fabulous jacket, I think. And that's the Mark I remember.
My mom and dad would be taking care of the cats, and I'd be taking care of the puppy since it's my request.
Is there a particular kind of puppy?
So this was the end of the conversation, and I asked if he was going to get a new cat or a dog, and that's what this is.
My mom and dad would be taking care of the cats, and I'd be taking care of the puppy since it's my request.
Is there a particular kind of puppy you're interested in?
A Shih Tzu?
I bet those are going to be busy dogs. Like a sheepdog with a poodle?
Shih Tzu with a
Oh,
poodle.
a Shih Tzu, not
Yeah.
a sheepdog.
Shih Tzu with a poodle.
And you call it a
Sheep poo.
sheep.
Sheep poo.
Okay. How big are those?
They're tiny,
Okay.
even when they're old.
That's very fun. Have you seen one?
Yes. Like, there was this person in DC that we saw, and we were like, what is that dog? And it's like, it stays pretty small and it's cuddly, which I want, and it doesn't bark too much.
That is super fun. Do you have a name? No
I
name.
have to see it.
Yeah, I'm with you.
To see it. And the C.S. Lewis quote I love. C.S. Lewis said somewhere that it isn't just that his friend died, it's that the part of him that only his friend could bring out would never be brought out again. And I love these two. This is another favorite picture of Liam's, of him and Mark. And they got to have good 10 years together of bringing something really beautiful out in each other. And they got to tell each other goodbye. And Liam has Mark's love and teachings and silliness. He got a lot in those 10 years. And he got some death education alongside too. All right. So that was a lot. So let's shake a little. You can yes, stretch, do your fingernails, rub your face a little bit. That's always a good one, right? There's these really great receptors in your face. Yeah, take a big breath. We have about 20 minutes, and I am happy to answer questions or go in a different direction, or what's on your mind? How'd it hit you?
Don't be afraid to speak.
Absolutely.
I love rooms full of introverts. It makes me very happy.
It's it's definitely very intense. It's really kind of emotionally hard actually watching it, primarily because when my late husband passed away, I had a 2.5-year-old daughter, and it was really tough to actually explain to her, because I used to bring her to the hospital for a couple of, well, when we were in Taiwan, a few times, and then the last couple of weeks in Monterey, California, I used to bring her practically every day. Then all of a sudden, when I didn't go to the hospital. I told her, and she said, "Why are we not going to the hospital?" She was already very verbal at the time. And I said, "Well, Daddy is gone." And I knew she would not be able to really understand what that meant. And she said, "Gone, where?" And I said, "Up." And she looked at the ceiling, of course. So everything is kind of literal for her. So it was really a tough thing for me to actually kind of, really just explain to her what happened to her father. So at 2.5 years old.
Oh,
So,
what a beautiful way you did it.
mhm.
You did it in a way she could make sense of in her age. And I imagine she got older, you did more explanation. Tell me where
Yeah.
I'm wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. And I used to kind of bring out the family album that we had, so she could actually look at her dad's picture, practically, every time I felt, she really missed him. And I knew she got sick one time, and I was going through her clothes in the closet, and there was a note, and she said, "I wish you'd be here with us today because I really miss you." And I really cried, and I went right beside her, and I had to, continue telling her about her dad not coming back anymore. So it was really tough.
Yes, it sounds really tough. Yes, it does. Yeah, and it also sounds like you took good care of her and took good care of you.
Yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you, Rosalinda, for sharing that. It brings to mind the question, like, how are adults, supposed to support and care for young ones when they themselves are going through, the intensity of the emotion of the dying time and then the
Yeah.
after.
Yeah, this is the goodness of the village. That's the good.
Yeah.
You have other people around who can fill in when you are bereft in a way that keeps you from being able to care the way you wish to care. Sleepovers are wonderful things. And the opportunity for self-compassion is abundant in these situations. We can't know how we're going to be or how we're going to need to care for our people around us until we're in it. We can hear stories all day long. I like that the stories are there because sometimes we can pull from those as we move into the next thing. And when we know better, we do better. We learn. I learn every death I attend, every person I work with who's in a grief experience. I learn from them, and I take that into the next one, and I take that into the next one. I've never had an experience that's been 100% the way I wanted it to be, and I haven't shown up the way I wanted to. And for parents who are exhausted and grieving and wondering how in the world to do this, that self-compassion is imperative, and having support in all kinds of different ways is also, I will say, imperative. I know some people can't get the support they need. I wish they could. I wish we all could, but it certainly helps. Yeah.
I was wondering, and this is a little bit off topic, but I was wondering why he needed to be embalmed when he didn't want to.
Yeah, that's a great question. He died in Washington, D.C., and he was being buried in West Virginia. And to go across state lines, after you've died, you must be embalmed. This was new to me. There was a big flurry of activity about moving Mark to the farm and having him die at the farm. And he was very, very far in his process. A thing that happens often in a group is one person wants to do something, rightly so. You get to the point when you're caring for somebody who's dying and we got to do one more thing or something. It's really hard to sit and be. And we were at that place with him. This groundswell of let's get him moved out to the to the farm happened. And I was not the power of attorney. I said, I'm going to call the power of attorney. There were two of them, and they made the decision to keep Mark in Washington. So that precluded his wish to not be embalmed. And I think it helped all of us because we could all be settled and Mark could be settled in that house. And it's a decision we made at in the moment, as happens. Yeah, that's a great question. Thanks for asking that.
There is a great comment here and a question from Diane. And so I'll read it. A woman from a child loss group is very worried about her 12-year-old daughter. Her little brother died 6 months ago. He was 10. Mom is worried because the daughter does not seem to be grieving. She pushes away her mom at any attempt the mom makes to get the daughter to talk about the little brother. They also have tried equine therapy. Daughter doesn't want to continue that either. Any thoughts for that grieving mom?
Yeah. So the child is grieving. That whole expression is an expression. It's not the expression that the adult wants. The adult wants to see crying and evidence. And if the switch can happen to the adult's understanding that the child is doing the best she can, exactly how she is, and the pushing away is part of her experience. So then you come around, you begin to offer things that can be a resource, just like the equine therapy. That's a really brilliant way to step in and try. Another thing I would think of, 12-year-olds have, most 12-year-olds have opportunity to get on the computer if that is something, and get her plugged into something like the Dougie Center, where she can read stories about other children who have had a death of a sibling in a similar fashion. She'll read about her own experiences in the stories of others, just like we did today. Being able to connect with other kids her own age will be really, really helpful. So the mother's grieving. She's grieving the death of a 10-year-old, and she's worried about her 12-year-old. And I would imagine life is all stirred up and crazy right now at 6 months post. So for her to get help and support and settling will be useful for the daughter. The children's greatest predictor of moving through a loss is the parent's ability to move through the loss. And that doesn't mean perfectly. There is no perfect. It's just moving and expressing and saying things aloud and not, yeah, I was going to say not shutting down, but I don't even believe that anymore. I think we take care of ourselves as we need to, and that little girl will do that. And the mama will do that too. That's sad.
Thank you. Thank you. And I put the website for the Dougie Center in the chat.
Fernside is another one. Fernside.org is another one that has resources.
FER? Fernside? I don't know that one.
They're in Cincinnati, another children's grief center. Yeah, and if they're in an area where there's a children's grief center or groups, and the young lady would be willing to go to one of those, that's a terrific way. I often had kids that would come to those, and the parents would come to me and say, I have no idea what's happening upstairs. She won't tell me anything. Yeah, sorry. I'm not going to tell you either. I'm just glad you're here. Keep coming. And they get what they need.
Yeah.
This is a big, big topic. We can go in all kinds of directions. And, I chose this one because this is a hospice community, and I don't see a whole lot of conversations about being with dying and including kids being with dying. And the direction I chose today. So
there is a wonderful comment here on the chat from Gail. So I'll read it, Gail, if you don't want to. My experience is that even very young children can process death. My son was less than a year old and pre-verbal, but when I brought him into the room where my father-in-law had passed, my son looked at the body in the bed and then snapped his attention to the ceiling area and began to babble. His attention stayed on the ceiling until his communication had finished. When he completed his talk, he looked at me and I knew he was ready to leave the room. It was a wonderful way to say goodbye.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing that.
Yeah, lovely. That's so true. Yeah.
I heard a story this week about a little girl who was talking about her grandfather, and the mother said, "You never met your grandfather." And she said, "Yes, I did." And she said, "You never met your grandfather. He died before you were born." And she said, "No, I met him when I was coming down the stairs and he was going up the stairs. She was being born when that man was dying." And in my language of dying work, I hear about stairs all the time. And for that child to say that gave me goosebumps all over my face. I love it. He was coming down the stairs. She was going up. They passed. Yeah, go ahead, Astrid.
I have goosebumps as you say that story.
It's a good story.
Yeah, that is so true. That is so true. There are so many ways of connecting.
Indeed.
Wow. Thank you.
Gail started it.
Yeah.
I took a little boy into the ICU one time to say goodbye to his sister, and I got a lot of flack about it because the kid was pre-verbal, and the kid had a nickel and been playing with the nickel the whole time we had been together. And he walked into the room and he looked, and it was encouraged to give the hand of the sister a kiss, and he did that. And then he took the nickel and he put it on the bed, and he stood there for a minute. It was very reverent, and then he was ready to go. And I'm with you, Gail. I think there's some kind of knowing, conscious, unconscious, ordinary, non-ordinary. I don't know. I quit trying to figure all that out. I just try to stay open now to those kind of experiences because they buoy me and encourage. Yeah. Hi, Patrick.
Hi, I just want to tell you that I've been glued to this because the content has been outstanding.
Oh, good.
I'm a pretty old guy myself, and I don't know if I'm ever going to need this, but I will beg Astrid for a copy of it to prepare me for it if I ever find myself in that situation. Anyway, I want to commend you for sharing this with us.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
You're welcome.
We don't often share the fullness of the hospice experience. We say they died surrounded by family and friends, and then we get on with it. That died with family and friends packs so much. There's so much beauty and pain and lifiness in that. I mean, there just is, and we can learn from it. The comment that Mark's sister made about death being beautiful in a way that she didn't understand it could be, it can't always be. Some deaths are just miserably hard, and sometimes they can be. Sometimes we make them harder. So I think the more stories we tell, we're willing to tell each other about things that have happened in our lives and in places we've been where there's been a death, we can help each other. We in this country are not prepared for what's about to happen in the next 10 or 15 years with the baby boomers dying. There's not enough resources. There are not enough resources, and we're going to be taking care of each other. So the more we can help each other learn and build relationships and know that you're going to help your neighbor, or you're going to help I have a college professor and her partner that I will be taking care of. They're probably going to live to be 100, both of them. But I've promised to take care of them, and I will. I absolutely will. This community of care can extend as far as we want it to, or be as small as we want it to. There's all kinds of ways to attend to dying and to die, and include children, because they need to know too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there are so many ways to, prepare for this. And so, Martha Jo, I'm thanking you from the bottom of my heart. This was really, really rich, very experiential. And it really encompasses the hard and the necessary and the beautiful and wonder of it all. So thank you for bringing that duality together. That's really, really lovely. Thank you. And I want to remind everybody that we're going to continue this conversation in a couple of months. I'm going to quickly here share the screen, my screen, so you can see, hopefully, that we're going to be talking about death next month. No, in 2 months. Talking about death won't kill you, how to have that conversation. This is one of the ways in which we can plan and prepare for those beautiful experiences that Martha shared with us. I hope that you'll be able to join. And I want to get back here with all of us. And, let's give a big thank you to Martha Jo.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah, very good. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. I can feel your energy, and I appreciate that. These are always co-created, and we did good today. So thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Yeah.
If I can answer questions or shoot me an email, I'm glad to be a resource. However I can be a resource. It's really my pleasure to do that. And just let me know you were here and how I can help. I'll be glad to.
And
Thank you.
We'll put your website into the recording that's mailed out to all participants, and then we'll have it on our website. So thank you. Jo.
Thank you so much, Astrid. Thank you.
Thanks.
Be well.
Mm-hmm. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.